It's time now for perspective. 10 years have now passed since a NATO-backed uprising in Libya led to the toppling and death of Muammar Gaddafi. What ensued was a power vacuum as the country was carved up into numerous warring factions and quickly became a hotbed for extremism. A UN-brokered ceasefire between the two major warring sides was agreed in October, and a newly formed interim government is set to hold elections at the end of this year, but scepticism abounds. To discuss the legacy of the Libyan revolt, I'm joined now by Wolfram Lacher, Senior Associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. He's also the author of Libya's Fragmentation. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24 today. Now, we are 10 years on from the toppling of Gaddafi, and Libya is routinely described as a failed state. In the broadest terms, how have we got here?
Well, of course, there was the fact that the 2011 revolution was also a civil war and that it ended with Gaddafi's demise, which essentially left the country without a central authority. So although we had a transitional process after 2011, there never was a central authority of the state to rein in power struggles that gradually escalated over the years until they led in 2014 to a new civil war in which the country's institutions split in two. And since then, we've had recurrent efforts to negotiate a new political settlement.
And how damaging was it that no national institutions survived the descent into civil war, do you think?
I think the crucial aspect of the 2011 war was that we had not, the revolutionary forces were not a centralized armed coalition, but they were a coalition of local armed groups. And therefore, when the regime collapsed, when regime forces collapsed with Gaddafi's demise, they did not re-establish central authority, but started competing over influence at the central government level.
Now, UN-sponsored talks in Geneva have produced a new interim government with plans for an election to be held in December. How much faith have you got in those elections taking place as planned?
Well, first of all, I think there are a number of steps that need to happen before we ever get to elections. Currently, we're at a stage where a so-called interim executive authority has been formed of 4 people. They are supposed to form a unity government. So currently, we're at a stage where the competing political factions and their associated armed groups, compete over positions in this new unity government. And the first thing that we need to see now is who will win and who will lose out from that competition over government portfolios, and what the losers will do. Will they accept the authority of this unity government? Will the Eastern authorities, the parallel Eastern authorities, submit to the authority of this unity government? And if that happens, then there are a number of further steps that need to happen to go towards elections.
Now, the process of establishing an interim government hasn't, it should be said, thrown up a huge number of new faces. The new interim Prime Minister, Abdelhamid Dbeibah, is a wealthy businessman who made a name for himself under Gaddafi. How much of a problem is that going to be going forward, do you think?
The problem is not so much that his name is associated with the Gaddafi regime. It is that there are allegations against him and his cousin, Ali Dbeibah, that they were involved in large-scale corruption under the Gaddafi era. But Dbeibah also has the advantage that he has ties across the political spectrum and across Libya's regions, and is not associated with one particular political force. And this may give him the opportunity to bring in a range of different factions into his government.
And what about the perception of this interim government from abroad? How is the international community feeling about the next few months in Libya?
I think for now the reactions internationally have been very good, and I think particularly Western governments can hardly believe that the process actually got so far, that the UN-led process actually produced a unity government. Also, across Libya, the reactions were fairly good so far, but that again is a function of the fact that we're currently in a stage where factions are competing over influence in this government, and how they will position themselves towards it will probably change once it is clear who is in it and who is out.
Now, a key part of the ceasefire agreement stipulated the withdrawal of all foreign mercenaries in the country. What's the situation right now with proxy forces in Libya?
So foreign mercenaries, Syrians deployed by Turkey, Syrians deployed by Russia, Sudanese supporting, or Darfur armed groups supporting Haftar, who are paid by the UAE, and of course Russian mercenaries, also paid by the UAE. They are still in the country. In fact, they appear to be fortifying their positions, particularly when it comes to the Russian contingent. There is no sign that they are leaving the country. It's also notable that these foreign powers, Russia, Turkey, the UAE, haven't undermined the negotiations for a unity government. So they don't appear to be very worried that this government will really unite Libyans and will cause them to push foreign forces out of the country.
Now, just looking ahead a few months' time, we touched on it a little earlier, talking about elections scheduled for December. How do you go about establishing free and fair elections in a country as war-torn, as unstable as Libya has been in the last 10 years?
I think it is very, very difficult. So even in the best case scenario, even if we do get to the elections in December or be it a few months after that, I think there are huge issues associated with these elections, particularly if they are presidential elections, where one person then gets to play a disproportionate role in a situation that, where a country is just emerging from several successive civil wars and where you might have candidates directly affiliated to one warring party then competing and winning in the election. There will be big questions associated with the transparency of voting in areas that are controlled by particular local armed groups or by particular military coalitions, such as that of Khalifa Haftar. And there will be big questions concerning whether the losers will accept the result of the vote.
Wolfram Lacher, I'm so sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Wolfram Lacher, Senior Associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, also the author of Libya's Fragmentation. Thank you very much.